Okay, hi everybody. It's Dennis Smeltzer with TSANet. Actually, you're not seeing my video. You're seeing Paul Esch, who's going to give you the webinar this morning. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's an important topic and one that's really gaining momentum within the organization. And we have quite a few members that are using TSANet Connect, and we continue to see. And you're going to. I don't want to steal all of Paul's thunder here. He's going to walk you through several slides, including some volume things that we're looking at and some of the things that we're doing. So Q&A is available for you all. If you want to go ahead and submit any questions, we'll go ahead and monitor those. We're going to record this session, so it will go out to everybody that has set up, or if you want to share it, we'll make sure that you all get that. And I think without anything else right now, Paul, I just want to turn it over to you and let you go ahead and walk us through it.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Dennis. So yeah, let me get started here right away. I think probably most people that are tuning in probably are very familiar with the TSANet Connect platform and what it does. But for those who might be new to it, I just want to go through very quickly the TSANet Connect process. So TSANet Connect was designed to connect two engineers and their associated cases together with kind of this simple handshake, and then let them work outside of the system. So you can just kind of see the flow here where a sender goes to TSANet Connect, they find the member they want to work with, they complete a very simple form, they press submit, and then this email process kind of makes the connection. And resulting is both endpoints know each other, so they know the engineers and how to contact each other, they know their cases, and at that point they step outside of the system and stay within their native CRMs to solve it, whether that's email, phone calls, or WebEx, or whatever makes the most sense to solve and collaborate on the issue. So that's TSANet Connect. A little bit of the high-level timeline, just so you understand a little bit where we're at. In 2018, we developed the system. Again, we spent a lot of time working with members to make sure this is what the members wanted, and it was designed appropriately. So all of 2018 was spent doing that. We had a technology committee. We iterated quite a few times with different prototypes. We shared that with the regional focus groups that played a big role as well. And then really exiting 2018, we had a system to deploy. And 2019 was spent deploying that system. What we did was not kind of a hot cut, so to speak. We slowly deployed the system during the course of the year. So we slowly brought on more and more members. We had two systems running in parallel. We really spent most of 2019, really kind of refining the system, making sure it was really working well before we brought on the next batch of members. And that brings us to this year, where really our focus is to improve member adoption. So at this time, 100% of the members are on the TSANet Connect system, and I'll kind of give you a good status update on where we are now. So the first view of the status is with the usage. And you can see here, I think, kind of two messages that I'd want to send. Obviously, it's still kind of low volume, and I think TSANet Connect in general is not a high volume process, right? So it's kind of an escalation process. The good news though is we're seeing month over month volume improvement, so I'm pretty happy about that. The thing to keep in mind also is this only tracks TSANet Connect transactions. So if a member is still on static documents, we don't have any metrics associated with that. So this is purely the TSANet Connect methodology. And we'll kind of share a little bit what we're doing with the members that are still on there. And then you can see the top open group users. I'm sure there's quite a few of you that are on this call that see your company's name on there. So that's good. You see kind of who the top members are. I would say kind of the takeaway from here, if you don't see your name on here, then that probably something you want to take a look at. Definitely reach out to me. We can help take a look at what some of those causes might be. Sometimes it's better awareness and training. Other times it might be access, but there's definitely some things we can take a look at to try to understand your usage better. Then moving into the releases that we've had so far this year. We've had an April release that by far the biggest feature, and I would say the biggest feature this year yet, was single sign-on. So that's now available to all premium members. It supports the SAML 2.0 standard, which virtually every identity management system supports. So far, we've got about a half dozen members that are either on single sign-on or pretty close. But again, it's available to all premium members. So if you have not taken a look at single sign-on, definitely reach out to me on that. It does greatly improve the user experience for your engineers when they go to make outbound calls. If you're not familiar with single sign-on and SAML 2.0, basically it lets you use your company login and password to access the system. The other thing you can see here is some support for some custom processes. So what we've been doing, and I would say prioritizing most of the releases around, was to make sure if we need to modify the system to work well with some of our largest members for collaboration, we have done that. So whether that's integrating into their system or tweaking email notifications, whatever it took to kind of make sure it blended well into their support process, we've tweaked the system to do that. Then, of course, we did all the work in the April release to make sure we've ramped down all the legacy systems, and then we've made some improvements to different areas of the system. So then moving into the July release, and this was just released here about a week ago, we added a process form note. And again, I would say with this release, you'll see a lot of these kind of improvements and things associated with maybe some particular members. Again, we've been really taking feedback from members and having that be the priority of the release. So for example, this process form note, what you'll see is a banner that you can put on the top of your process form now that maybe highlights very important pieces of information, right? So say your process requires a serial number and you want to kind of communicate, hey, here's the format of the serial number so people don't put in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Say there's some other important piece of information you want to kind of message right there at the top of the form, you now have the ability to do that. We also implemented what's called a parent-child process form. So this was specific for an IBM use case, but I do think there's some other members that can benefit from that. And again, this kind of provides a more simplified way for a member that's collaborating with IBM. So as you can imagine, they have a lot of different departments, maybe some different process escalation procedures. What they didn't want was a member to search for IBM and see 10 different selections, right? So they hit the parent and then they select essentially the product area that takes them to the child form. So that's really kind of helped simplify the inbound process for submitting a member. And then you can see this, custom inbound email templates, some customization around particular members. Again, this tends to be, asking the question of, hey, what do we need to do to modify the system to work well, for example, for Microsoft or Cisco or whoever you've seen here on these member slides. Then we've made some improvements, of course, to a few of the admin interfaces, some modifications to single sign-on, and probably the other big thing that we've done, and this has come up with the advent of single sign-on. A lot of members to do that require some security information and validation. So we've now implemented regular penetration testing that identified some issues that we fixed in the July release as well. So it kind of helps make sure that we're solid as far as the security on the system as well. So I'm just taking a step back in looking at what we've learned so far, and I would say this is during the course of both 2019 as we are bringing members on, as well as 2020 as we're kind of ramping up the system. The first one I would say is the most important. If I reflect back upon the member web and maybe even kind of the early days of Case Exchange, our biggest challenge was we didn't really have great visibility in what was actually happening and happening real time. So if we got complaints, it was usually sometimes, weeks or months after the fact where somebody made a comment of, hey, I used such and such process and it didn't work. So at that time, it's very difficult for us to go in and try to understand that. We give some kind of generic feedback back to the members. Now with TSANet Connect, we see real time what's happening. So if a collaboration request isn't responded to, we've got an escalation queue that not only sends some automated emails to the right people, but we also can get involved as well. And I would say, that process of getting involved has really helped us, debug and in a lot of cases improve the system as well, right? So we get involved and understand, how's that member receiving their inbound request? Why didn't they respond in time? What can we do to better improve the system or maybe the inbound process on their side? So this visibility has really, really helped. The second thing is we do send out surveys after each collaboration request. It's a couple days after P1, P2, and a week after P3. And we see largely positive feedback from the users. And when we kind of demo it or maybe talk about it in the focus group, the other thing that members are really messaging back to us is they like the fact that we kept it very simple. And we also like the fact that we haven't changed how they work, right? So again, this is part of adapting it to your process to where you're not asked to create a brand new way of receiving an inbound request and asking your engineers to work in a completely different way. The idea here is to kind of design it into your inbound processes and make sure that when the engineer gets assigned the collaboration, they're just working it within their CRM system just as a normal case. So that's definitely been very well received. So then kind of moving forward, like I said, for 2020, this is the big thing, is to improve adoption. And of course, our method of measuring whether we're successful there is the volume, right? So we want to see that month-over-month improvement. We know that there's some things that are kind of holding back the volume. Certainly this first one, other ways of working were in place. And of course, if you think about the previous member web where there's some static processes and maybe some members that worked closely together more frequently said, hey, let's implement a more direct process. We have some of those legacy ways of working that we need to flesh out and replace. Certainly, we still have some messaging that's going on. So in some cases, it's, hey, come back to the new TSANet. Maybe there's some previous viewpoints on how it worked, and getting the engineers and kind of the key users back to using the system is a big one. And then the last thing is we've started to work more in a more detailed level with members to analyze usage. And I think, again, back to the first one, right? Visibility can get TSANet in their help. We've never had this data before. So the ability to kind of take data out of TSANet Connect, merge it in with member CRM data and kind of get some insight is something we've never been able to do. And what we've kind of focused around for that analysis is to take a look at, again, engineer adoption, right? So we want to know for a support engineer, when they go to TSANet Connect, were they successful? And these kind of three things need to take place. Obviously, it needs to be easy to use. We've, I think, done a good job of kind of initial system design and kind of continually tweaking it to make sure that we continue to focus in that area. I think we're doing pretty good. The second one, I think, is an area of focus both this year and next year. And this is back to, obviously, a key part of success is when you tell the engineer, hey, go and use TSANet, and they search for the partner they want to work with, they need to find them. So in a lot of cases, this could be making sure that the members' partner programs are there, that if we have missing members, that's communicated to us, that we really try everything possible to make sure that the members are found there. And then the last one we talked about, when you submit the request, you get the response. So that of course, is something that we focus on as well. So moving back to the analysis, this is what we did with a particular member, and again, kind of highlights the fact that now that we have data, we can discover some insights. So we took from the member's CRM system just a little bit of information, right? So we don't need a lot. We took their case number, the date the case was created, and then what was called the context domains, right? So whenever this particular member, of course, you have a assigned engineer to a case, you have the customer on a case, but then you also have these additional contacts, right? That maybe come from, the customer, or maybe in this case, obviously, could be a vendor collaborator as well. So we took a bunch of information out of TSANet Connect, and we kind of brought that together in a little data warehouse where we could run some reports. And we found some very, very interesting stuff. I think the first big thing that we found is that yes, there's a lot of collaborations that are still happening outside of TSANet Connect, right? And this was just a viewpoint of collaborations with some board member companies that we analyzed, and you can kind of see some of the numbers here. Now, some of them, when we got into analyzing, we found that in some cases there were some solution support models and some things that weren't really designed to go through TSANet Connect. Now, this certainly could be part of future at TSANet Connect. So there's a percentage of this that just wasn't designed to go through TSANet Connect. Maybe it's company A was the frontline support and they back-end escalated. So they had this what's called direct entitlement, where certainly the vendor could just go to the extranet of this member and log a case. So that's kind of this first use case. And we see that as, yes, something we need to work on. But maybe that's not highlighting something that the engineers or the users could change, right? Because it's kind of designed not to use TSANet Connect. The second use case, though, and I would say, when we analyze some of the details of the cases, this is probably maybe a third of the collaborations that were outside of TSANet Connect. We found that the customer actually made the connection, and in this case, obviously, we need to dig a little bit further. Because there's several reasons that could happen. Sometimes the customer took it upon themselves, maybe to reach out to both vendors at the same time, and in that case, you can't really fault the engineer for that, because they got involved in a multi-vendor collaboration from the customer standpoint. What we don't want to see, though, is the member A receiving a call from the end customer, working the issue, feeling it's an issue with the other member, and saying, hey, the easiest way to collaborate with them is to have the customer open up another case with the vendor and get them together on a call. Certainly that works, but it's not a very customer friendly process. So that's really the one that we're working on and taking a look at the most to see how we can improve that. And that could be changes to entitlement process or whatever we need to do to make that a little bit easier. But you can see here, definitely some opportunities to get more volume through TSANet Connect. The second thing we learned by looking at the data in this particular member, just so you know, I would say is our number one member any way you want to look at it from a metric standpoint. So they have the most partners in their partner programs. They are by far, the leader on this whole TSANet Connect thing. But even with them, when we took a look at the collaborations that were happening inside their CRM system, a lot of them were happening with vendors that they did not have a relationship with. So again, this highlights the need, even though this member had like 300 plus partners, there was still a good chunk of them that they did not have relationships with, but they still worked with. So again, this gave some action points to kind of go back and understand those relationships and see should those come through TSANet and TSANet Connect. So again, this type of visibility we just really didn't have before, and I think it's really helped kind of derive some specific actions. So then transitioning here into what's happening in the second half of this year. Moving first into the different releases, we have the September release that we're starting to work on now. You see a few improvements here in the area of the escalation process. So again, a lot of this is based on the feedback we've gotten from members, and it tends to fall into, hey, when things go wrong, the escalation process needs to be very solid as well. So we're taking a look at what we can do to kind of refine that and make that better. Obviously you don't want to have to leverage the escalation process, but boy, if you need to and that fails, then you really have upset users, right? So we're really making sure that escalation process works well. So a couple of enhancements to that, a couple of improvements to some user interface elements, specifically the country selector on the phone. But then also you see a couple more custom process refinements. Again, we're working with some of the key members here. If we need to tweak the processes to make them better, we will. If we need to change the process to onboard a member in the TSANet Connect method, we'll do that as well. So you kind of see some continued enhancements there. And then, of course, a couple other enhancements in the areas like user registration and how we administer the system. So a few of those things in there as well. And then when we go to the last release of the year, we are going to be adding a second hosting site in Europe. And again, this will be a hot standby. So this will, currently the system is very, very high availability. We're running 4 nines now. This obviously will get it up even higher. So we'll have, I don't want to say a site that never goes down, but certainly a very, very robust setup. We're also taking a look at what's the best way to integrate the things we're doing with the focus groups and bring more visibility into that for TSANet Connect. Some of it's just to make sure it's just easier for people that are spending time in the focus groups to find their content, to add content, to ask questions, right? So kind of bring that in there, prevent them from having to have 2 separate logins. We have Microsoft Teams site that's doing that for the focus group, and of course TSANet Connect. So we're going to take a look at what it takes to bring those two together. So we'll be looking at that. We're making some improvements to reporting. Again, some of that based on the analysis that we've been doing. We feel, hey, there's a few things that we could do to kind of improve the reporting. And again, that could be some enhancements to both TSANet Connect, but also maybe some enhancements to how we did that analysis with a particular member. So we've got a case study on that that we've got on the website, and we did some learnings on that. On hey, it'd be much better. For example, we got the product information from the CRM system or the end customer information, right? So what can we do to better streamline and make that analysis much easier moving forward? And then a couple of placeholders here for custom processes. And then number 6, you see we've been doing a lot of these custom processes that included automated initial response, right? When I say automated initial response, this is where the receive member has the request and they need to send their initial response back that says, here's my case number, here's my assigned engineer. And some of the customizations that we've done with some specific members automated that initial response. And what we plan to do here is kind of document a standard method that any member could use if they have some type of workflows and can send automated emails based on certain events in their CRM system. So this should allow members to automate that piece if they want to as well. And then the last piece here, and this kind of I think shows a little bit the importance of the focus groups, is we started the Japan focus group this year, and one of the big feedbacks from them was, hey, we love the TSANet Connect thing. It's nice and simple, but we'll make it even better is a lot of times when they have a collaboration request, and especially if it's with a Japan customer, they need local language support. And of course, not all members can provide that, but some members can. So the idea here is what can we do to put in place that says, hey, we have a collaboration event here on someone with this local language requirement. If you've got an engineer you can assign with this local language support, that's a preferred connection method. So we're going to be looking at that as a pilot for Japan. And again, that might expand to other areas as well that maybe require local language support. So that is the December release. The last area that we're spending time on as well in the second half is to reduce the number of members that have static process documents. And again, if you look at kind of the numbers, it's not a huge number. We have 19 members that are still on static process documents, and we have over 700 members of TSANet. So we're talking a small number, but a lot of these members are what I would call the backbone members, right? So the members that drive the most volume, the members that everybody asks about when we show them TSANet Connect, right? So, and of course, some of these have not moved to the TSANet Connect process because they have very complicated internal structures and things we need to kind of really tune. I've listed some of the members here below, so you can kind of see, yeah, these are not small members, and certainly ones that we want to make sure we get it right before we convert them to a process form. But certainly moving these types of members, our goal is to get down to less than 5 that are still on static process documents, and I kind of highlight the ones that we really want to get moved to the process form. So that's a big initiative here in the second half. And again, you saw some of these members driving custom process and system development. So there's going to be some changes associated with making sure we get them on the system. So my last slide here, and then we can open it up to some Q&A if you've got any of those. It's just kind of highlighting what the next steps for this year look like. I would say number one, I kind of put these by priority. The getting people moved over from the static documents right to the process forms. That by far is the number one. We have to do that, especially for those key members there. Number two, again, I would say one of the big points that we're seeing as far as if somebody comes to the site and doesn't have a successful collaboration, and then also that analysis, right, that you saw where probably, what was that, I think 60% of the collaborations that they had in their CRM system were with partners they didn't have a relationship with. We want to make sure that we expand the partner programs, get new limited member connections, basically make sure that when they search, they find the partner and they can collaborate with them. So that I would say is the second priority. Third priority, because we've seen this as a big improvement. I would say if you're a premium member and you don't have single sign-on, definitely reach out to me. We want to really kind of push that. And then the other things, 4 and 5, I think are things we're continuing to do, right? We monitor usage, we work the escalations, we improve the system based on what we see and what we hear from members. So kind of making sure the members are the ones that are really driving the system and communicating to us what it takes to get the adoption up. So that is it. I'll pause here and see, Dennis, if there's any Q&A.
Yeah, so thanks, Paul. There is one question I wanted you to go back and address a little bit more on the single sign-on, but let me do this first. And the question is really a simple one, but I think it's a little bit more of a detailed answer would be good here, which is integration with Salesforce. Do you want to go ahead and talk about that and what some companies are doing now and kind of just address that in general?
Yeah, great point. So what we've seen when we talk about integration with CRM systems, most members just want to configure, right? They don't want to go to their IT teams and say, this is what we need. So what we try to do with Salesforce, and in fact, every other system, is leverage native functionality of the system to do the integration. So for Salesforce, for example, every member that's done integration so far has leveraged the email to case methodology, right? So they automatically create a case, they queue it up, they create that against an account called TSANet Connect. Maybe they have some interesting workflow within their Salesforce that kind of moves it to the right queue. So that's what they're doing so far. And then where I said we're going to do in the fall release a standardized method of auto response. We've got a couple of members that we're going to be working with there to leverage workflow within Salesforce. So Salesforce has the ability to, for example, say, hey, once there's an assigned engineer on this case, I want to send an email to, for example, connect@tsanet.org with the following information so that we pass that as the initial response back to the system and the member. So again, all those things are things that an administrator can do with Salesforce. You don't have to go to your IT team and say, hey, let's do some fancy stuff here. We do, when I talk about fancy stuff, we do have a couple members that are doing deeper integration, right? Where we're leveraging APIs. And usually what we do there is we don't go to the member and say, here's the TSANet Connect API, and go, figure it out. We work with them together and we always leverage their API. So I would say if we do anything fancier with Salesforce in the future, and I really don't see the need to do that short term, but it will probably leverage things like webhooks and things like that. But currently so far, the email to case and then the workflow for initial response back is really what all the members are doing with Salesforce.
Okay, and then lastly, I know we're getting close to running out of time here, but you mentioned single sign-on a couple of times, and I know we've got a lot of members moving over to it, which from our perspective, we're getting better and better and better at getting people onto it. Could you talk two things? One, what is our experience so far on how long it takes to get somebody on it? And then secondly, how do you think it's going to affect our call volume?
Yeah, so we have seen, and again, just kind of, I would say how we've developed most large features is we worked with a particular member to kind of co-develop it. And it was VMware we worked with. They have a Workspace ONE app that we did single sign-on to, but of course we made sure that it all matched that kind of industry specifications of SAML 2.0. So once we had that in place, kind of worked all the details, really what we found is it's about a half an hour effort, right, to get your IT team on the phone. They usually have some interface into your identity management system, and it's kind of, exchanging some keys and a few settings, and it's just working. So we've done that with a few different identity management systems. Again, Workspace ONE, Okta, a couple of others. So it seems like once we do one, it's very easy to kind of replicate that. So again, this isn't going to your IT team and saying, hey, we need a big project. It's usually, again, some configuration thing that your identity management team within your IT organization can just do on a short call with us.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Paul. I don't have any other questions, and it looks like we're just about running out of time. I want to again thank everybody for joining us. We're going to get this recorded. Any closing comments, Paul? Are you good? You covered everything.
No,
Fantastic.
I think that's good. I think the key is, definitely, take a look at your volume, take a look at kind of how you're using the system. If you want us to be involved with part of that analysis, and maybe they'll call it a midway tune-up of 2020, where we kind of take a look at what's going on and what we can do to kind of get using the system more, please reach out to either myself or Dennis.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate everybody. Take care.